Okay, this is now the 5 minute tarot for the 5th of July 2017. And today we have a video from Chad answering the question about what to do to move this channel forward in a decent way. And so Chad sent me the video. The audio is a little bit, it was a mono recording and it sounds different from stereo. So you may need to turn it up a little when Chad is speaking, or turn me down when I'm speaking. Either way, it's interesting to see somebody else's method and procedure for doing a reading. So here is Chad.
All right, so here we are. I am going to try to keep this video under 5 minutes or around 5 minutes. I tend to talk a lot, so if it's over that, then I apologize, but I'm going to do my best. John, I have been with you for 7, 8 years when you first started putting YouTube videos out. Your exercise, The Fool's Journey, was how I learned tarot. And I think if anybody is starting out with tarot, or who's even just interested in the tarot, I feel like The Fool's Journey, that entire exercise, is the best way to go.
Okay, Chad mentioned The Fool's Journey, so let me tell you what it is, basically, if you're not familiar with it. And it goes back to when I first began, and my teacher told me, or she said, the fool's walking along a road and the first person he meets is the magician. What happens? And that's the beginning of the fool's journey. So what you do is you take the fool on a journey where he meets each of the major trumps one after the other in the order in which they appear in the deck. And so you think about the conversation or the instructions or the advice or the suggestions that the magician might make to the fool. You think about the kinds of questions the fool might ask the magician and so on. And then he meets the high priestess, and then you can just deal with the fool talking to the high priestess. But maybe you, in some way, because the fool begins not knowing really anything, maybe you figure out what difference there is in the fool because he's met the magician, because the fool who meets the high priestess has already met the magician and has been changed by the encounter. So what kind of changes have taken place? So it can become really quite complicated and complex, but it's a good exercise, and that's what Chad was referring to. I've got a video for every card. It's somewhere on YouTube. If you search for The Fool's Journey, you should find it. Okay, that's The Fool's Journey. So back to Chad.
And John, the way that you explain it, it can't get any better. And I'm going to do it again. I think you should do it again every 10 years, and you should write down what you think and what you see, and you should keep a log, or you should keep audio. Because that's what I did. I found that it was way too much for me to write, so I decided to keep an audio, and I'm going to do that again in just a few years.
Okay, this is just a quick comment because Chad mentions that when he was doing The Fool's Journey, but also maybe with making notes about the tarot, he found that there was a lot to write, so he made an audio recording instead, which we can do so easily nowadays with telephones, with cell phones rather. So remember that in many ways there isn't a right way or a wrong way. When it comes to taking notes, personally I like to use typing or written words, or written notes rather, but if audio works for you, do what works. And so if you want to do something but you struggle with the normal way of doing it, you can invent your own way. You know, there's no reason why you can't make audio notes or video notes. You don't have to use pen and paper or a keyboard if you don't want to. So there's all sorts of people out there, and we're all in many ways different, or we've got certain preferences. So why don't we just, do what suits us, do what works best for us?
Because it's so much, it's so good. Anyway, so you had asked a question on your YouTube video, what should we do to move the page forward? And I started shuffling my deck, and a card fell out, and I didn't know if I was going to use it at first. I kind of looked at it and I thought, maybe, I don't know. But I'm glad I kept it.
So Chad was shuffling and a card fell out, and we probably recognized this experience because maybe cards falling out is probably a common experience. And so Chad, as he said, he wasn't sure what to do with it, but he was glad that he kept it. And that's so if you're shuffling and a card falls out, remember Chad, and so make a note of it or remember what the card was. And this is because probably you're going to be glad that you remembered it, or that you'll be glad that you paid attention. If let's say 15 cards fall out face down, I don't know, put them back because that's a lot. But if one card or maybe two cards fall out, there's something to be said for making a note of them or taking a look at them. And although if you look at it and quickly pick them up and put them back and shuffle on, then that was a correct decision as well. But if you happen to notice what the card is, think about it and wonder, because it may be that the first few times this happens, you don't know what to do with the card that falls out. But as you become more experienced and you get better at making sense of cards, you're probably going to be glad that you remembered what the card that fell out was, because you can look at it and think, if it wasn't supposed to fall out, it would, and make it and make you pay attention to it, then it wouldn't have fallen out in the first place. That's one way of looking at cards falling out, that you're supposed to look at them, or like there was a reason that they fell out. And if we look at them and see if we can do something with them, probably often we'll be glad that we did.
The first card that I drew, and this isn't the card that popped out first, the first card that I drew was the Three of Pentacles. And I like it because after thinking about it, I feel like it feels precise with the question that you asked on your YouTube channel. What can we do to move the page forward? The first thing that came to my mind when I pulled this card was planning, execution.
Okay, Chad just mentioned organization, and so did Rob a few days ago. And so Rob got the Seven of Swords, and Chad gets the Three of Pentacles. But they have different cards, but they're relating what's going on in the card to the same question. And that can be why, even though the picture's different, they look at the picture and they relate it to the question and they come up with the same answer. And in this case, it's organization. So I think this means that they're both reading cards and not just memorizing meanings and then trying to apply them or trying to fit the apparent meanings that they read in a book to a question that somebody asked. And you're going to notice that Chad is going to use the word, I've seen the whole video, but he's going to use the word collaboration in a minute. And this is what Rob said as well. And Lisa had points to do about group activity and getting other people involved. So even though there was a third different card from Lisa, they're all giving the same kind of information or making the same kinds of suggestions about the best way to move the channel forward. Okay, so there's going to be, Chad's going to mention collaboration in a minute, and it may make you smile because especially if you've seen Rob's and Lisa's videos.
And organization, like I didn't even have to think twice about it. I feel like planning and organization are key factors in moving your YouTube channel forward or getting other people involved, and that's exactly what you're doing. I feel like, in a whole sense, it's a collaboration. It's a coming together of ideas. It's an exchange of words. It's a whole community of people coming together and exchanging ideas. And I feel like that's what's going to move the page forward, the YouTube channel forward. All right, how much time do I have? Oh, I'm running out. I've got 2 minutes left. All right, the card that kept popping out, and I find this very interesting, was the Hanged Man. The reason why I like this is because it goes hand in hand in this situation with the Three of Pentacles. If you think about it, the Hanged Man, I don't see it as a card of suspension. A lot of people see it as a card of solitude or sacrifice, or I don't really see it like that. In reference to your question, I see it as a lot of decision making to do. I feel like you have a lot of decisions to make, and I feel like if you really want to move the page forward, then you have a lot to think about.
So Chad talks about, he looks at the Hanged Man and thinks there's a lot of thinking to do. And it may be because, I don't know why he said that, but it may be because the Hanged Man's head is illuminated, it's been lit up or emphasized. And so was the angels in the Temperance card that Lisa got. So if you look at the Hanged Man, he's suspended, so maybe not a lot is going on, but there's activity around the head area, and the head is where you do your thinking. So again, if with Chad remembering the question and looking at the picture, he produces an answer, or he comes up with an answer that is actually a good idea. And he relates what he says to what appears in the picture, which means that a questioner who's never seen cards before can also look at the picture and see this makes sense, or this can be why the reader is telling me this, and it makes sense, and it's a legitimate answer, and it's something I should consider. You're not just you're helping the questioner to get a better understanding of the question and the answer by looking at and pointing out what's going on in the illustration. And at the same time, with Chad right now, he's talking to a camera. But if I'd been in the room with him, I might have asked, God, he says, I've got a lot of thinking to do. I might have said, okay, what sort of thinking should I be doing? And because it's a Hanged Man, which can be suspension and delay, is it going to take me an awful lot longer than normal to come up with answers? Or is it going to be a struggle when it comes to thinking? Or will I not see results of thinking for a while, only because the Hanged Man is upside down? And so if Chad says there's a lot of thinking to do, I could then say what sort of thinking, and then Chad could help me to understand what sort of thinking. So I'm making this point because when you're doing a reading for anybody, even if the question is there, when you're speaking and talking about what the card indicates, remember that somebody is listening to this. And maybe if you can also put yourself in the position of the person who's hearing what you're saying, it's going to help you to come up with what the next question is, or what a logical follow-up would be to the information that you're giving them.
I feel like a lot of people are giving you a lot of ideas, and maybe you have to think about what's going to be best for you, or what's going to be best for your YouTube channel, or if you're serious about turning this into a business. But I feel like this goes hand in hand with the Three of Pentacles for two reasons. One, you have a lot of thinking to do. You need to make a lot of decisions. And I think once you do, then a lot of this is going to come to come to fruition.
So Chad is talking about thinking and relating it to the Three of Coins that shows the builder or the craftsman, and then you've got the person with the plan. And if you think about it, if you're going to build a building, it doesn't just happen, right? The cathedrals and buildings and houses don't just appear overnight. They have to be thought out and planned. So if you expand the idea of thinking and planning, if you expand this idea outward, then there should be thinking and planning and organizing when it comes to figuring out what to do with the channel. In the same way that there's thinking and planning going on in the Three of Coins.
Based upon the Three of Pentacles. Another thing that I found interesting is that the Hanged Man is 12. His number is 12. The Three of Pentacles is 3. If you think about it, the Hanged Man, 1 plus 2 equals 3. So maybe what this is saying is once you have all the decisions made and once you figure things out, then what you want to happen and what you want to happen for other people, or just for the general knowledge of the YouTube channel, or whatever you have in your mind going, then that'll come to fruition. But first, I think you need to make a lot of decisions, and I think you need to think about a lot of things first. But you have everything that you need. You have plenty of resources, and I think the Three of Pentacles defines that. How much time do? Oh, I'm over 5 minutes. All right, John, I appreciate your videos. I watch them consistently. All right, well, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, so Chad talked a little bit about the Hangman being number 12, and 12 is 1 and 2, and you add that together and you get 3, and he happened to get the 3 of coins. So then he relates those two cards and sees a connection between them and relates it back to the question. So he's not just making something up, as people sometimes do with numerology or with numbers, but he's taking the symbolism of the numbers and applying them, or applying it, to the question and providing more of an answer. And it struck me as well that maybe he's giving us all an idea of what we could do. It's a big summer here, but in long winter nights when you're wondering what to do, you could always look at the Hanged Man and see what's the connection between the Hanged Man and the 3 of Cups and the 3 of Pentacles, or the 3 of Swords and the 3 of Batons, because according to Chad's method, there is some kind of connection. And we may not have seen that before, and may not have thought of it before, but we can certainly see what sense we would make of it. Okay, that was Chad. We've seen Rob and Lisa, and now we've got another reader with his own personality and his own manner of presenting information. And he makes good points. And he says some of what the other two said. So we can see there isn't just one way of presenting information. And there's a variety of cards, or different cards, that are going to give the same answer, or a similar answer to the same question. Even if the words that they used and the sense that they made in the answer, maybe you're not going to find those exact words in a book that says it, that claims to give you meanings of cards. But if you remember the question and look at the picture and make sense of it, you're going to come up with correct answers. Okay, that was it for Chad for today. So tomorrow we'll do something else. Not sure what right at this moment, but there will be something. Thanks very much. See you again. Bye-bye.